Why, hello, ladies and gentlemen. On today's show, a simple question, but with a very, very complicated answer, guys. Who should be the number 5 starter for the Padres rotation in 2022? Who should flesh it out? Because there's a lot of candidates. It's not so easy to answer. We're going to be talking about that and much more on today's Locked On Padres, guys. You know what it is. Here we go.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh yeah. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Padres Network, your team every day for Friday, January 21st. As always, I am your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with some of my baseball-related work at places like Baseball FYI, Friars on Bench Baseball, or Just Baseball, to which I am a staff writer for. You could check me out on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, and then at LO_Padres for the show account, which has all sorts of memes and dreams on there that I think you guys will appreciate very much. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Padres your hashtag first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Even if today, not necessarily your first listen, because once again, a little bit of a delayed episode, guys. My apologies. I'm still very sick. If you hear me sneezing a bunch on today's episode, that is why. Okay, that is why. Especially for my YouTube folk. But anyway, guys, and by the way, yeah, Locked On Padres on YouTube. What are you doing? We're trying to get to 200 subscribers. Go check it out. Today's episode, guys, we are talking about the Padres rotation. And more specifically, I want to focus in a lot on who are the candidates for that 5th spot, right? Because the Padres actually have a lot. And the more that I actually thought about it, the more I said, remember how a bunch of months ago I was saying that the Padres were in like DEFCON 2 when it came to needing a starting pitcher, which whatever is the second not worst one. I think 4 is the worst. So DEFCON 2 would then be not as bad. I actually retract that, and I think that the Padres are probably at DEFCON 1, but it's confusing which pitcher that they need. You know what I'm saying? Who is going to be the person that steps up, and who is going to be the person that fills in that last number 5 spot? First thing we're going to talk about, though, is the first 4 people in the rotation, guys. And a lot of them are pretty obvious, in my opinion, anyway. A lot of them... Sorry, guys. I'm trying so hard right now not to sneeze. But I think that the first 4 are somewhat obvious who they're going to be. And the other thing that's somewhat obvious is that the solution to this problem or question is probably going to be found in spring training. I actually think that this spring training is going to be a lot more important and interesting than the last spring training for the Padres, in the sense that we're actually going to learn quite a lot, I think. Because last year it was like, well... You brought in Snell, you brought in Darvish, you brought in Musgrove, you have them, you have Grisham and all these guys, you have Cronenworth, he's clearly going to be a second baseman, all this stuff. It was pretty obvious kind of what we were heading for, at least in my opinion. But let's still talk about the starting 4 guys that are going to be the Padres rotation, guys. Those 4 are Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, Blake Snell, and Mike Clevinger by my approximation. Now, I don't mean that in necessarily in order. I don't know who will be the opening day starter. It could be Yu Darvish. I don't think it will, though. I think it's still going to be Joe Musgrove. He was by far the best starting pitcher for the Padres last year. His ERA was similar both times this season. He never had like necessarily that, aside from the no-hitter, he just didn't have a valley. You know what I mean? He only had the high. And for the most part through the season, yes, he'd get beat up, but he would bounce back immediately, had that curveball usage and the slider, and to make up for the fastball stuff, he should be the number 1 starter. And I don't think anyone really debates that. Number 2, probably going to be Blake Snell or Yu Darvish. One of those two. And it's very interesting because I think that a lot of are just so bullish on Blake Snell for this season. I know that a friend of mine, Colby Olson, ranked him amongst, I think, number 18 or 17 in his top 20 starting pitchers. That's an article you should go check out at Just Baseball. He's a very analytic guy. And basically with Blake Snell, you say, yeah, he was pretty bad for the most of the 2021 season, right? His ERA finished at 4.2, but it was a lot higher at one point. I think it even reached a 5 at one point. And what happened is Snell was so much more dominant and looking like himself in the second half. And a big reason for that was relying more on his fastball slider combo instead of trying to get cute and using the changeup and using some curveballs and whatnot. The curveball was getting teed up on. It hung in there too much. And I talk about this with Musgrove. Musgrove's curveball can hang in there too much, and it gets launched for home runs every time batters kind of key in on it. But Snell, it was like he couldn't even get a whiff on it. His whiff percentages on all those pitches were just not. Strikeout percentage in baseball among qualified starting pitchers in August, he was awesome. And I think that with the addition of Ruben Niebla as the pitching coach, I think we could see some fun stuff start to take place here. I think Blake Snell is going to be very, very good. Then you have the last two guys, which are Darvish and Mike Clevinger. Yu Darvish, let's just remind everybody that this guy, from his 2020 and 2019 seasons, especially the second half of 2019, most dominant starting pitchers in baseball, finished with a 3.98 ERA with the Cubs in 2019. But a lot of the good from that came from the second half. And then you had in 2020 with the Cubs a 2.01 ERA, 76 innings, and 93 punch-outs, which was very, very always been capable of getting those punch-outs. But here's the question about Yu Darvish. Is he a guy that needs some fine-tuning? Is he a guy that maybe having new pitching coaching and stuff like that, like I mentioned with Snell, around him could be helpful? What I mean by that, most importantly, is it's so fun to watch this guy. It is so fun to hear him talk about how he has 12 pitches, right? It's so much fun when he has one that he calls the Supreme, which is, I think it's like a knuckle cutter or whatever that has some fastballs. I don't know what it was. I love that stuff. It's so much fun, and I love characters like Darvish in the game. However, we just saw what happened with Blake Snell. Would it actually benefit Yu Darvish to be a master more of just four pitches maybe, or even three? Right? 4 or 3 pitches that he can use and he can rely on a lot more. Would that pay more dividends than being this guy who, yeah, it's really intimidating as a batter with someone you just don't know what they're going to throw. Aaron Nola is a good example where he has 4 pitches that he throws basically all the same percentage of time. But Yu Darvish, it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't be, relying on some of these other pitches that just aren't as effective for sake of changing things up, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's my thing with Darvish. I think that hopefully he can bounce back. But then again, he is a bit older, so it would not surprise me. I'm going to say this is my take of the podcast. If Darvish is the winner of the rotation next year, I don't think it's because of the talent necessarily. I just think we see this happen in baseball. He is older. Maybe he had that final, like I said, since the second half of 2019, he'd been one of the best dominant pitchers in baseball. Maybe he's finally just starting to fall off a little bit in his age 35 season. But even still, great strikeout percentage. And if Yu Darvish is like your number 4, you're doing really well. And then the last guy is Mike Clevinger, who we don't know too much about in terms of his recovery from what I've heard. Some inside sources that I can't necessarily name, but they have said that it sounds like he's proceeding well. And I know that a lot of Padres fans don't trust it, because when have you ever trusted health when it comes to Padres pitchers? This has been an issue for a very long time now. For about 3 years, especially now that they've become more contenders. But in theory, Mike Clevinger, a lot of people talked about Cal Quantrill and how he's been doing well with Cleveland. That is true. It is unfortunate they had to give him up. But remember, at the time, it made sense. All right. The Padres farm system was a lot more stacked when they first made that trade. And also, Cal Quantrill, good pitcher, I think. He's probably going to have a decent major league career. But Mike Clevinger was a star. Just a reminder, at the time the Padres acquired him, the lowest ERA marks amongst starting pitchers in Major League Baseball were Jacob deGrom with a 2.49, Clayton Kershaw with a 2.64, Max Scherzer with a 2.71, Justin Verlander with a 2.82, and Mike Clevinger with a 2.97. At the time they acquired him, at that deadline 2020, those are the lowest marks amongst all starting pitchers, not just for 1 year, by the way, but since 2017. Mike Clevinger is that dude. So if he comes back and if he is healthy, I have no doubt that he's a sleeper in fantasy drafts. He's going to be a sleeper for the rest of the league. He could be that thing that really pushes the Padres up ahead and reminds everybody that's like, hey, maybe Snell and maybe Darvish don't necessarily figure it out this year. If you could have those 2 aces in Musgrove and Mike Clevinger, that's already a lot more than a lot of people have. So there's a lot to be optimistic about, guys. But before we talk about that coveted number 5 spot, all right, before we get into that, because that's really the big question about this episode. I've been pontificating about Yu Darvish and Mr. Musgrove and all these guys, right? But you want to know about the number one guy. That's good. Not the number 1 guy, the number 5 guy, the number 1 candidate for the number 5 spot. That's what I mean, guys. But before we talk into that, guys, let me talk to you about something that isn't up for contention, that isn't up for debate, guys. And that's what the best protein bar in all the land is. We're talking about Built Bars, of course, guys. If it's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. It is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so dang good. You're going to want to eat it. You're not going to want to have the Snickers bars. You're not going to need a piece of pecan pie. You'll be fine because you got Built Bars, guys. What I love about them, covered in 100% chocolate, soft and easy to chew. They are delicious. Just reading the health-related factoids of this thing, though, most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. And you're just living, my friend. You're just living. And of course, what I love about them the most, aside from just the metrics and whatnot, great variety of flavors: peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, my mom's favorite cherry barcia, my favorite apple almond crisp, and Locked On's favorites, coconut brownie chunk, guys, and many, many more, and probably many more to come. So, guys, what are you waiting for? Go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Remember, that is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. And let's keep it moving, ladies and gentlemen. We keep it moving. Let's talk about that number 5 spot of the Padres rotation. And again, let me just remind you, thank you for making Locked On Padres your hashtag first listen every day. Free and available on all platforms. Tweet at me using that hashtag. I would love to see it. Let's talk about it, guys. Let's talk about it. So the way I see it is there are a bunch of candidates for this number 5 spot. Some of them obvious, right? Number 5, Chris Paddack. He was basically the 5th starter for the majority of the season, especially when you take into account the next guy, Dinelson Lamet. He's the 2nd guy that's in contention for that number 5 spot because Dinelson Lamet was just in and out of the lineup. They tried to work him back in. I still remember, and I know that this annoys a lot of Padres fans, I still remember when it was kind of being reported, all systems go. Pretty sure Jace Tingler said that, or AJ Preller, one of the two. All systems go. Really? Okay. And then what happened? He went out for 1 inning and then left with a forearm tightness injury. Okay, so you have those guys. Look, see, I'm already sniffling. Then you have Mr. Ryan Weathers, who in the second half, let me just read you some starts. Let's start with August 16th at Colorado. Or actually, no. Let's just, I don't even want to recap these, actually. Let me just say, in 2021, he finished with a 5.32 ERA after looking like one of the more, dominant rookie kind of standouts, with the exception of, Trevor Rogers and Jonathan India. There was a point where Ryan Weathers was coming up big, and he was a gamer. One thing that I remember about Ryan Weathers, too, was that he loved raking. When he was hitting, he swung that bat harder than I've seen a pitcher, and with more enthusiasm that I'd seen a pitcher, kind of in a really long time. But sorry guys. Again, if you hear the sniffling, my apologies. I am trying my best. I am dying out here, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my Lord Almighty. Anyway, as I was saying, so he's another candidate, but like I mentioned, his splits first half and second half, let's just look at this really quickly. 2.91 ERA in the first half over the course of, 58 innings. Didn't have a ton of strikeouts, but even still managed to put 42 punch-outs over those 58 innings. Was a good control guy. Was he getting lucky? Yeah, a little bit. Some of the ground ball stuff and the BABIP was certainly going in his favor. Some decent defense by guys like Machado and guys like Cronenworth probably helping out a little bit. But then second half, I did not expect this much of a regression. Second half, Ryan Weathers had a 9.25 ERA over 36 innings pitched. The only reason it wasn't as many innings is because, 1, he was a little bit on an innings limit, being a young guy that he is, and then 2, because they had to move into the bullpen because he was that disastrous. And even moments in the bullpen, like a game September 29th, 3 innings, gave up 5 runs, or against the Angels on August 28th when he went 3 innings and also gave up 3 runs. He's had some bad moments. But again, there's still potential there. It was his first year. I know he was absolutely disastrous in that second half, but at least let's point up he's a contender. So you got Paddack, you got Lamet, and then you have what's his face? Ryan Weathers. And now for the last 2 candidates for this 5th spot. One of them is arguably the most confounding prospects that we've seen in baseball in a long, long time. And I'm saying that as someone who isn't necessarily a prospect fiend, but someone who pays a lot of attention to other people who know about prospects. That's McKenzie Gore. Okay? McKenzie Gore. I don't even know what to tell you. I don't even want to bring up numbers. Bottom line is this. He was the top rated pitching prospect in all of baseball heading into the 2020 season. Then he mysteriously was getting lit up, had a lot of control issues, had a leg kick issue, and all of a sudden, some people even have him outside of the MLB top 100 prospects. A guy who was getting Clayton Kershaw comparisons because of the fact that he has 4+ pitches, because of the fact that while the fastball isn't, have the biggest velocity in the world, it tops out around 95, at least at this point. He just could wipe you out with all these other pitches. Just a mixed master, from what I understand, right? And all of a sudden, he has absolutely crashed. But here's the interesting thing with McKenzie Gore. And next week, I'm probably going to be talking with my buddy Aram Layton, who recently did his Padres top 10 prospects over at Just Baseball. Definitely recommend checking that out. It's a really, really great and phenomenal read. Aram is awesome. Going to have him on the show to break it down more probably next week. But it's just a lot of people are wondering, should the Padres trade McKenzie Gore? And my opinion on that is I just don't think you can, because you would be selling so low on the guy. All right. Remember, you still have some questions to the rotation. How long is Darvish going to be around? Right. He's 35. How long is Musgrove going to be around? I'd love to re-sign him, but he is a free agent, right? That does need to be put out into this. Mike Clevinger, you only have him for 1 year because the first year he had to rehab because of that Tommy John surgery. So having McKenzie Gore and keeping him, it's become a little bit more of a lottery ticket than we expected. Don't get me wrong. It is frustrating with McKenzie Gore. But I still think that it just would not make sense to trade him. If I'm another team, I want to trade for this guy, counting on the Padres' history of luster results when it comes to starting pitchers. I would bet on that if I'm another team. I'd be like, we could do better than those guys. Let's do it. Bring him over. So for McKenzie Gore, he's definitely in contention. Is he a guy that maybe you just want to throw out there and be like, all right, at some point, we need to just figure out, does this guy have something, right? We've been waiting forever. A lot of people thought he was going to debut in 2020. Seriously, a lot of people thought second half. And then remember in the playoff game when Clevinger went down, Lamet went down, Ryan Weathers came in? A lot of people were wondering, was that a bad sign? The way a lot of people saw it was, no, Ryan Weathers is more of a bullpen guy. This is just more of a situation that makes sense for him, and it was okay to bring him in for a spot start, while Gore, a little bit more of a full-fledged, that guy's going to be an all-star and all this stuff. Maybe we misplaced that, right? Maybe we misplaced that. And then the last one that I want to talk about is not, actually, straight up, just isn't as interesting as the rest of these guys, right? And that's Adrien Morejon, still a very, very young prospect for the Padres at just 23 years old. And I know what you're thinking. You're looking at just the basic numbers. In 2020, in 9 games and 19 innings, he had a 4.66 ERA, 25 Ks across 19 innings, which is pretty solid, and only 4 walks. That's very impressive. But I just think he's one of those guys that when you watch him, you're like, there might be something here. He is a great example of why it stunk that the Padres had no depth last year, because he tore his UCL. He had the Tommy John last year. And that's another thing that needs to be mentioned is a lot of this rotation stuff with the Padres does depend on health. Let me be very clear. But losing Morejon, when that happened, I don't think we realized how much impact that really was. Because having a guy like that towards the end of the season when you had all these injuries was huge. Or I should say it could have been huge. Who would you rather have, Adrien Morejon or Jake Arrieta? Who would you rather have? Vincent Velasquez or Adrien Morejon? I'll take Adrien Morejon. I think that guy throws hard. He's still young. And honestly, just overall, I don't think has quite had the opportunity just yet to go out there and prove himself. You know what I mean? I just think he just hasn't had the opportunity, and I think that when he gets it in a more full sample size, everyone's talking about how Cal Quantrill was raking over for the Cleveland. Raking, the incorrect word to use when describing pitchers, but nonetheless, I will be using it. What if, Adrien Morejon could be that guy? I have not heard enough on his rehab and development, but I'm just saying that is a guy that we should keep our eye on who could make some spot starts for the Padres this year. But before we talk about just like even more in depth about the other guys that could fill out this fifth rotation spot for the Padres, guys, let me talk to you about another form of betting, because that's what we're all doing, right? We're all making predictions and stuff, especially with a lockout going on now. And you know who's got you covered the best? Bet Online. They would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. And with the new year and a new updated desktop and mobile website, you can sign up today and receive your 50%. Oh yeah, you heard that right. Don't touch that dial. No. You don't have to rewind. Don't worry. You heard that correctly. 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit, guys. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get started. But whether it be baseball, whether it be football in the playoffs, that I can't wait for, by the way. I think this divisional weekend is going to be awesome. But basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, Vegas casino games, they've got you covered, guys. Don't wait to take advantage of the easiest to use and fastest platform when it comes to betting on sports out there, guys. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, let's keep this daggone thing moving, ladies and gentlemen. The waning hours, the final moments, the witching hour of today's Locked On Padres episode, guys. Let's talk a little bit more about the first two guys that I mentioned, because I didn't talk about them too much, and that's Chris Paddack and Dinelson Lamet. So, Chris Paddack, let me just pull up his baseball reference page here on my phone, because I don't like to have too many tabs open when I'm recording, because I feel like it messes up the thing. Anyway, the most concerning thing about Chris Paddack, aside from just the blank looking at his baseball savant page, in terms of average exit velocity, max exit velocity, hard hit percentage, expected batting average, expected ERA, expected weighted on base, expected slugging, barrel percentage, and K percentage, and whiff percentage, and the spin on his curveball, he ranks below the 30th percentile in all of those, except for barrel and K percentage, which he is 37th and 35th. The only thing that Paddack was especially good at last year is limiting the walks, which is good. It shows that he's showed a lot more control, especially with his fastball. But I'd be lying to you if I haven't just I feel like this ship has sailed as Chris Paddack as a starting pitcher. I think Chris Paddack could be a guy that is really effective out of the bullpen. Maybe he just has enough juice to be there. And we've seen guys succeed. Look, the Padres gave one of those guys a big contract who hopefully can come back pretty healthy and whatnot in 2022. The transition to bullpen is nothing to be upset about when it comes to Chris Paddack, especially with all the arms I've been talking about on this episode. I think he could be very effective. Maybe you use him in a spot start every now and then, but for the most part, I love to see Paddack in the bullpen. And my biggest thing with him and why I want to see him in the bullpen, let's break it down. In 2021, his four-seam fastball absolutely getting torched. It just does not have enough vertical drop on it. It's always been a problem with him, and it happened in 2020. It did not improve in 2021. 2020 four-seam fastball, opponents were batting 308 off of it, and then 2021 they were batting 314. So there was no improvement on his most used pitch. 61% of the time using it in 2021, and then 58% in 2020. Even worse, arguably. Now, this isn't a seismic change, but it's enough to be brought up. Chris Paddack's changeup. Chris Paddack's changeup was one of the most feared changeups in all of baseball. Hyperbole. Straight up, not hyperbole. Opponents hit 187 off of it in 2020. I don't have the numbers. I can't find it on the Savant page for 2019. But bottom line is, people couldn't hit that thing. It was one among the best changeups in all of baseball. It's why he had such a good 2019. And then in 2020, that batting average went up to 234. That's interesting. And the expected batting average, if you're wondering, maybe, did he just get a little bit unlucky there? No, 253 for that. Now, those aren't numbers to freak out about, but it does show you, are people starting to catch on to the changeup? And if that's the case, and the fastball is so bad, then maybe this guy just isn't cut out to be like a full-fledged sheriff. right? The only news about Paddack in 2021 was that he started using his curveball from 7% to 12% and that well, which was very nice. A batting average of 1. But that's my thing, is as soon as he seemed to develop that third pitch, his ace in the hole. So that's the troubling thing about Paddack. He would not be my ideal candidate for the 5th starting spot for the Padres. Then the next one is Dinelson Lamet, who I think has to be, in theory, the case for number 5. He has to be. And you know why? It's very simple, man. He is so electric when he is healthy. That is the big whole problem, though. And don't get me wrong, a lot of what we've talked about today is predicated on health. There are a couple guys that depends on skill. That being Blake Snell, that being Yu Darvish. Oh, a little bit of Yu Darvish, though, because Yu Darvish apparently had a back and whatnot, but I don't know how much that's supposed to make your ERA a 7. Basically, ever since they started banning the sticky substances, that's a whole other thing. But when it comes to Musgrove, it's skill. When it comes to Snell, it's skill. When it comes to Paddack, same thing, right? With Dinelson Lamet, Mike Clevinger, Adrien Morejon, it's about health, and especially in the case of Dinelson Lamet. Dinelson Lamet finished with a 2.09 ERA in 2020. He was an ace. Straight up, 69 innings, 93 punch-outs. This guy has raw, ultimate fireball ability with that fastball and slider combination. And I love sliders, man. Sliders just seem to be the pitch that has just paid dividends for Padres pitching these past 2 years, whether it be Blake Snell using his slider last year, whether it be Dinelson Lamet in 2020, or even remember him? I just grabbed my nose again to audiences because I didn't want to sneeze. Remember, his slider was killing it too. So that's what's so funny, right? Like, that's just these off-speed sliding away pitches, sinker stuff too, has just seemed to pay dividends for the Padres. If you look at his baseball savant page, exit velocity, hard hit percentage, expected batting average, K percentage, chase rate, whiff percentage, fastball spin, very, very up there. Yes, people were able to barrel him, and yes, the ERA stuff was bad, but there's at least some exciting things there, showing you that when they do manage to hit Lamet, it's a little bit like, okay, you barely got the ball off on him. You know what I mean? And you're not hitting for too much power. He's not giving up doubles or home runs. That's very, very good. The question is, if at full power, can he be even better? That's the thing with Dinelson Lamet. Let's just take a look at some of his pitching stuff, just for a reminder about how good this guy is. His slider, let's see the batting average on it. His slider, his number 1 used pitch in 2020, opponents were batting 80 against it. 80. That's right. 80. 80. And then against his four-seam fastball, 286. Against his sinker, 115. He was a slider-heavy pitcher. Now, you might be saying, well, you were just bagging on Chris Paddack, for people maybe catching up to his changeup. It's possible. It's possible. Why aren't you bagging on people saying in 2021, the slider, it went up a little bit, 158 batting average against. And then his four-seam fastball, 360. Sinker, 600, right? I get it. But also, the whole thing here is that Dinelson Lamet was hurt. He was dealing with injuries, and the type of hit injuries that he's had, on top of the fact that he elected not to go the Tommy John surgery route, how much of that did it impact him? How much of it does his specific delivery, how hard he throws, get impacted by his injuries? I really think that it's not a question. That if healthy, Dinelson Lamet is the number 1 starter on this team. I'm seriously, I think he's the number 1 starter on this team. Joe, he would get it obviously because he's Joe. He's the San Diego native, man. I mean, come on, he's the best. But in terms of just raw ability, Dinelson Lamet's the guy. He is the ultimate X factor for this rotation in 2022. Now, is he going to be healthy? I don't know. But that's the whole thing. If I had to take a shot on a guy, out of everybody that I rank there, let me rank in order of someone comes to me and is like, you must bet on one of these guys. Who is it going to be? My current ranking goes Dinelson Lamet, number 1, McKenzie Gore, number 2. Then I think I would go, who am I forgetting right now? I'm forgetting right now. Because didn't I mention 5 people? Then I think I'd go Adrien Morejon. Then I'd go Chris Paddack. Or then I'd go Ryan Weathers. And then I'd go Chris Paddack. Or hold on. Let me put Ryan Weathers 3 actually, then Adrien Morejon, just because he's a little bit hurt as well, and then Chris Paddack. I just don't have a lot of confidence in Chris Paddack. I just don't think we've seen any like moments. You know what I mean? You know how a lot of people are talking about like Zach Wilson with the Jets this year and some other rookie quarterbacks and how they're all a mess. Well, Zach Wilson, at least, while he had those nightmarish games against the New England Patriots and threw like 5 picks against them, he did have a couple like moments. You know what I'm saying? Like he did have some games where you're like, whoa, okay then. Like that looked like a really good quarterback. At least you could say that with people like Weathers, with people like Adrien Morejon. I can't really say it with Chris Paddack. What was the last good Chris Paddack moment where you were like, that was awesome, and he looked great there? That's just me, guys. He has not been able to keep it together for too long, which is why I think he could be a bullpen guy. It's likely that Weathers and Morejon are also being in consideration for that spot, but Lamet and Mr. McKenzie Gore are the big X factors, especially with Lamet. If he is healthy, guys, we might not even have to worry about Yu Darvish. We might not have to even say, oh, forget Blake Snell. Like, it doesn't even matter with him. Musgrove, Clevinger, and Dinelson Lamet, just if those 3 guys hit, the Padres will be electric when it comes to their starting pitching. This is my thing, guys. There are so many possibilities here. This is not Chicago Cubs. This is not the Los Angeles Angels. This is not, what's another good example? Minnesota Twins, right? This is not a rotation full of guys that there's no way you could see it working, right? Can it go bad? Sure. Mike Clevinger could come out and be still injured, and all that bone chip stuff could catch up, and he just gives us a kind of season, right? He gives us like what Blake Snell gave us. That's possible. But it's also possible that he goes out and shows you, here's why I had one of the lowest ERAs among qualified starters since 2017. It wouldn't shock me. Yu Darvish is Yu Darvish. Joe Musgrove, we know what he can do. That's a bad man right there. He's an evil man. That Joe Musgrove. Oh, wicked man. He's a bad man. Joe Musgrove sometimes when he makes people look like fools with that slider and curveball combination, man. Let me tell you. But that's my thing. A lot of people are really wondering, should they be going for a big starter? Should they be going for Luis Castillo? To that I say, no way, Jose. Let's keep the farm system depth that we have, keep the assets, and bet on one of these 5 guys. Morejon, Paddack, Lamet, Gore, and who's the last one I'm forgetting already again? And whoever the 5th one is, and Ryan Weathers. Let's bet on one of those guys being able to give us some solid innings this year. That's my take. I hope you agree with it. If not, feel free to yell at me on Twitter. It's fine. But that, everybody, about does it for today's episode. Thank you for making Locked On Padres your hashtag first listen every day. But make Locked On Bets your second listen every day, guys. Your one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. In terms of the future of this pod, guys, next week, I already mentioned it, probably going to be talking with Arm Layton about the Padres' top 10 prospects breakdown. He will go even deeper into McKenzie Gore, define the mechanics, because he's seen all of the starts, every pitch, right? He's been tracking it and talking about the leg kick and everything. That'll be a lot of fun. And who rounds out outside the top 4? We know it's Hassel. We know it's CJ Abrams. We know that it's Luis Campusano. Who's the number 5 guy? Who's the number 10 guy? That's going to be a lot of fun. Also, going to be going over the Zips projections. I know I'm a little bit late on it for the Padres in 2022. I think that'll be really fun to go over, especially when it comes to the pitchers that we just went over. And then going to be talking about a whole lot of other things. Let me see. What do I got on this bad boy list of mine? Let's see. We're going to be going over an article in The Athletic from Dennis Lin, which was like a bunch of mock trades. That should be a really fun episode. Going to be going over just everything, man. It's a fun time, guys. It's a fun time. And I think we're going to really get a lot more creative over these next few weeks. But with that all being said, guys, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, at LO_Padres, Locked On Padres on YouTube. And until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies,